Hello everyone, this is Luis. Today, I will make a video replying to Titanic Animations about Aaron's theory. As you will see, Titanic Animations says a lot of nonsense and can even be viewed as deceitful. Don't tell him about this video because he'll try to silence me. For the people who aren't familiar with the situation. Basically, Titanic Animations wants you to believe Aaron is trying to purposely deceive you when Aaron only shares his theory for educational purposes. Real historians can accept different points of views and opinions. They have constructive debates, instead of simply trying to call the ones that disagree all kind of names and refusing to acknowledge any possibility to be wrong. This is not what Titanic Animations does. He begins his video with a bunch of nonsense where he calls Aaron names and acts as if Aaron is a complete idiot. I guess this is also his poor attempt at comedy. This very long introduction of his only aims at trying to picture Aaron as someone who you shouldn't listen to. Of course, this is done on purpose in order to discredit a divergent voice. Finally, he gets in the details of how the ship started to sink and admits that Aaron explained it correctly, except for minor differences in the timing. Of course, he acts like this is a very big deal, and as other minor details he points out, he acts like this proves that Aaron wants to deceive you. He then proceeds to talk about how not absolutely all doors were opened and claims that this proves Aaron's theory impossible. Yet, he doesn't explain why it would become impossible. This is a recurring thing he does in all his videos. He says something is impossible and wants you to accept it without any proof. Titanic Animations seems to be a bit confused because he first argues that the doors had a fail-safe that made him close when water rose. But, he fails to see that if doors indeed closed when water rose in those compartments, then how did water get in the other compartments? We are still talking about the lower decks, where there aren't any windows or other places where water could enter. Also, if all the doors closed and water drags the ship down allowing it to flood other compartments, there is an undeniable possibility that the ship had some air still stuck in some compartments even when underwater. He makes the claim that all Aaron's new findings over the last 10 years is nothing more than him starting from scratch because he can't think of anything more absurd. Again, you can notice how no arguments are made, just a statement which implies that Titanic Animations can apparently read Aaron's mind, as you can see in his own statement. He then sticks to small insignificant details again, when talking about a sketch that apparently Aaron implied was Jack Thayer's. The sketch was actually made by Lewis Skidmore, after Jack Thayer described the sinking to him. What a big deal, right? Such a big mistake from Aaron, and it makes such a big difference. This clearly changes everything and proves Aaron is deceiving. Titanic Animations then says Jack Thayer denied the sketch as truth afterwards. Of course, no definitive proof to this claim this is shown. Let's suppose Jack Thayer really did say that the sketch is incorrect. Why did he only say this after the sketch was published by newspapers? What are the chances Skidmore didn't show his sketch to him initially to confirm that it was accurate? Basically, either Skidmore is lying, or Thayer is. Of course, Titanic Animations only sees one possibility and completely ignores the other more plausible one. Okay, now for this part, I was completely astounded. This convinced me that Titanic Animations has no physics knowledge at all. For someone insisting so much on how ridiculous the physics behind Aaron's theory, you would think he would at least have passed high school level physics classes. He proves the contrary. He seems to think that when water enters a ship, the ship becomes heavier. He seemed very confused and I'm not sure he understands what mass is. This is not surprising, after all, he only learned about buoyancy after his subscribers let him know in the comments he was wrong. I have no idea how he pretends to be a Titanic enthusiast who knows so much about it but yet doesn't even understand the most basic aspects about sinking ships. Also keep in mind that the physics behind Aaron's theory are backed by university professors, from Logan Dublin University. Listen to how he explains an important point about how the bow is pushed up. But ignore his weight calculations, he doesn't understand how weight and mass works.
In order for that much weight to move back up in the water, and even out of the water, you would need something under the ship pushing it upwards, which is able to overcome the weight of the now 70,000 plus ton bow. Or you would need the stern of the ship to be pushing downward on the rear of the bow so intensely that it forces the forwardmost part of the bow upward.
This might surprise him, but the Titanic didn't actually get heavier, it was just underwater. By his logic, we should take in consideration the weight of the whole ocean and add it to the weight of the bow. Now for the most irritating part, here is how Titanic Animations lies to you in the most shameless way possible. There seemed to be a tremble run through the whole of the ship and the next thing we heard were loud reports inside which I think were the watertight doors giving way. And before you could say Jack Robinson there seemed to be mountains of water rushing through the doors. And I was swept away from where I was right against the collapsible boat. And I simply clung on for all I was worth. Whilst all this was going on she was going underwater and it seemed as if thousands of men were dragging me under with her. When suddenly, her nose on which I was, seemed to suddenly rise from underneath the water and I and a few more that were close by cut the ropes that held the boat to the falls. There was suddenly an explosion and I found myself whizzing through the water at an awful pace, having been blown away by the explosion. When I came to my senses a few minutes after I looked round and suddenly saw the ship part in the middle with the stern standing several hundred feet out of the water. He claims that Mellors was standing there and that he noticed the ship going down, even though his testimony tells a completely different story. Does this looks anything like a nose to you? Is Titanic Animations really not aware that when I came to my senses, doesn't necessarily mean that you were unconscious? Maybe Mellors meant he was in a state of panic before and came to his senses after. The point wasn't that he saw the V-brake silly, it was that he saw the nose go up. Which was before the parts broke. Then he says it's Aaron who misleads you. Let's look at his testimony again. He claims Aaron is misleading you because he doesn't show the full testimony. But buddy, even if you show the full testimony, she still literally said the ship's bow rose up in the air. What context do you need? This is very important because it may not prove that the bow rose or that Aaron is right, but it proves that Titanic Animations is the one misleading you. Aaron only took the testimony and assumed it was true. How does him presenting you with this testimony is him intentionally misleading? Also, notice how Titanic Animations only presents to you a theory. The one that Hippick only had the impression the bow arose because of perspective. Can he prove it? Who are we gonna trust more, a person that actually saw it happen, which is Mrs. Hippick, or some guy that doesn't understand physics and read about the event 100 years later? You see how everything contradictory to what he believes in is automatically dismissed. Isn't that what he accuses Aaron of doing? Again, even when the full quote is taken, it remains clear that Chaffee literally said, "The middle seemed to go down, lifting bow and stern into the air." Titanic Animations keeps saying Aaron takes testimonies out of context. There's no context possible in which this would be interpreted differently than she saw the bow rise into the air. Titanic Animations again uses the excuse of perspective, thinking that his own explanation is absolute truth even though it's a simple theory, just like Aaron's. The ends were sticking up. Titanic Animations claims this is slang, that ends meant end. Again, this is only his opinion, but when Aaron disagrees, Aaron is viewed as spreading misinformation. This doesn't make any sense. In my opinion, Titanic Animations is a clown. How would have then Miss Cameron describe a V-break if it truly happened? Yes. The same way. The ends were sticking up. Titanic Animations, reader of minds, strikes again and tells us what exactly Miss Cameron wanted to say, which is again conveniently not what she said. Titanic Animations proving how Aaron misses testimonies is actually Titanic Animations trying to discredit testimonies that contradict what he believes in. Even if you strongly believe this was slang, there is at least room for debate. This doesn't make Aaron a lunatic. Titanic Animations also shows a quote from Aaron that is slightly misquoted, probably on accident, and boasts for like a minute about his triumph of finding a mistake in what Aaron says. He then hastily shows other misquotes that are just Aaron not showing 5 sentences and quoting only the useful one instead. This is how quotes work, but Titanic Animations doesn't understand that you don't necessarily take things out of context when you present quotes. In conclusion, I think Titanic Animations is extremely misleading, and it's appalling how much of a hypocrite he is. Titanic Animations may not be trying to hide the truth for devious reasons, but more because he is an enthusiast who can't accept that, after all these years, he may be wrong and that what he learned and believed all this time could be false. It is all about his ego. Thanks for watching.